This naan is super easy to make. Anybody can do it. First, I'm gonna get my yeast activated. You can find active dry yeast in the baking section. It's really easy to use. If you've never made a yeast recipe before, start with something like this. It's very simple. And breads are just a couple simple ingredients that you probably already have at home. Sprinkle this over some warm water. This is about 110 degrees. You can just use your hot tap water. That should be perfectly fine. This is into 150 grams of water. I love recipes with weights instead of cup measures or tablespoons. It definitely makes things easy while using a food scale, and you're gonna make less dishes doing it. So while that's activating, you'll notice little tiny bubbles come up. That means your yeast is good to go. Always check the date on that yeast too. I always make sure to do that. And I've already pre-measured 500 grams of flour. I've also already measured 10 grams of sugar in a small bowl. If you're measuring lower amounts of ingredients, I like to use a smaller vessel. Your scale tends to be a little bit more accurate that way. So to this, I zeroed it out. I need to add 7 grams of salt. Go slow. Always go slow when measuring your ingredients. This is also why I usually don't combine ingredients, so then you can remove it, but all's good here. Because I was talking to you, I wasn't paying attention to my measuring like I should be. And this will go with the rest of my flour, all the dry ingredients together. Just gonna give that a quick mix, just to combine and incorporate everything. You can do this completely by hand. I've made it several times before by hand. You don't need a mixer, it just kind of takes a little bit of the work out of it. Now for this naan, I need a little bit of yogurt. And this will go with my yeast. It's nice to have some room temperature yogurt just to keep the temperature a little consistent, but if it's cold, it's totally fine. We'll get it all in there. We're gonna get this up to 150 grams. Ooh, just a little bit more, we're very close. What I like about easy, quick breads like this is it's usually pretty forgiving because you can make adjustments if you have too much flour, maybe not enough liquid. You can always make minor adjustments, but we'll get there. I'm gonna mix that up. And one last thing, 25 grams of oil. You can also use melted butter here. Just make sure it's slightly cooled. Our wet is gonna go into our dry, and we're gonna get this turned on. I always start slow in the beginning. Can't tell you how many times I have had flour all over the face, flour all over the counter. And then I'm gonna increase the speed a little bit. Grab a spatula to help incorporate everything together. Oh, it's going. Oop, see, I told you. Got a little aggressive, too aggressive. Low and slow. The dough's looking pretty shaggy right now. It should be pretty firm and dry. So if your dough's looking a little wet, have some flour on standby to incorporate a little bit more. But you wanna wait until it starts coming together. Moisture has a way of working through the flour, just give it some time. One of my greatest success tips in the kitchen is be patient. Things tend to work out if you take your time. If you're trying to rush and get this done quickly, you could make a mistake or things may not seem like they're going right. Good cooks are patient cooks. Just let this run and go clean up your dishes. Just give them a rinse, put them in the dishwasher if you need to. It's just a good time to just let the dough do its thing. See, it's coming together really nicely. All it took was a little time, and I'm meaning minutes here. Like, this dough is so easy to make. It's very user-friendly. If you're looking to get into bread making, start with something like this that is quick and easy to do. Very simple ingredients. Something like naan and tortillas can be very approachable recipes for many home cooks. I'm like so chilling with this mixer. Let this run a little bit more. That dough huck is gonna help knead everything together and get you to the right consistency. So I let this run for a few minutes. Once it's all formed in together, it should be pretty much ready. Right, dough is looking good. Ooh. And if you wet your hands a little bit, you'll be able to work with the dough a little easier. Especially for sticky doughs, wet hands help. Our nice, beautiful ball of dough, and just press it together. Whenever I'm making breads or doughs, I recommend use your hands. Get a feel for how sticky it is, how dry it is. And that way, the more you work in recipes, you'll know like, ooh, that time it was stickier, it was better. That time it was drier, it was better. And that way you'll develop some muscle memory for your recipes. I'm gonna set this in here. This needs to proof, rise up, get nice and fluffy. I like these reusable fabric covers. You can just use plastic wrap, or if you have a bowl with a lid, that works just as well. This will need to proof for an hour, hour and a half. Put it in a warm spot in your kitchen, or sometimes I like to turn the oven on just very briefly. You just want it lightly warm in there, not hot. Turn it off, put this in the oven to proof. Just make sure nobody turns it on to preheat. Put a little Post-it on the door. 90 minutes later, we are good to go. Look at this dough, nice and fluffy. Just gonna get this out of here. Let's start with a little bit of flour. Now I used all-purpose flour for this. You can use bread flour. Bread flour can help make your dough easier to work with. It'll be slightly stretchier, but this is looking pretty good. Don't wanna get this too big because I need to cut it. I just use a bench knife, or you can just use a regular knife on a cutting board. We're gonna do these in quarters. Little chaos kitchen here. What I love about this recipe, doesn't really matter the shape or the size, just rough it out. You don't need to get that food scale back out to make sure all these are the same size. Put your dough balls to the side. And as you're working with these, you can cover these lightly with a damp cloth just to keep them nice and soft. I'm gonna heat up my skillet, medium-high heat, while I shape my naan. I like to start it off, shape it by hand. Now most naan is a teardrop or oval shape. You could do these round. It could really be any shape you want. You want it nice and pretty thin. These will bubble up. This cooks very quickly, but you do need to do these pretty much one at a time unless you have like a larger skillet or flat top grill, then you can maybe do a whole batch at once. There we go, nice and stretchy. That's pretty thin, maybe as thin as a tortilla. I'm gonna let that sit there while I work on another portion of dough. Ooh, flour everywhere. It's always these occasions where I'm like, should have put on an apron, but here we are, nice and floury. Love a recipe like this. It can be very artisan, very homemade. Don't worry about the shape or the size. Each of them can be their own unique naan. Was just laughing about, everybody says naan bread, and naan means bread, so you're saying bread, really? I guess for us Westerners, it's just a little reminder of what kind of bread you're making, right? I have a couple of these started. As I continue, I'm gonna fry one while I'm rolling one out, because you do wanna give it a few minutes on each side. I like to use avocado oil. I have a convenient spray bottle. Just makes applying the oil to your skillet a lot easier, but you can just put maybe like a teaspoon or two in the pan to coat the bottom. Let's get our first one in. Like a nice even layer and nice sizzle. Keep a spatula, maybe even some tongs on standby, and I have a sheet pan to put them on when they're done. Gonna keep working on our other dough balls. You'll notice that your naan will get nice and bubbly. That's the yeast at work. Naan is just a great snack in general, nice accompaniment to any meal. Maybe try your hand at a tikka masala or a butter chicken, even vegetable recipes. Half of my family is Indian, so I love trying out different recipes in tribute to them. I don't always do as good as they do, but it's fun to experiment with different flavors. I've also done some fun recipes with naan. I use it as a base for a quick pizza, so you can make this dough, add in sauce, maybe some cheese, other toppings, make a little flatbread out of it. This is a great recipe for that. I've made naan tacos before, kind of like a pita wrap, so you can use some grilled chicken, add some vegetables, maybe a sauce, like a yogurt sauce on top. There's a lot of ways you can use this naan for a full recipe, nice and fluffy. I just flip it over. You just want a little toast on the other side. You don't really need that other side to go too long. It usually cooks pretty well just on the one side. I like the toasty bubbles. There we are, and that's all it is. It's a very soft dough. It's very spongy. You just want it lightly toasted, not too overcooked. You want to retain a lot of that moisture. I like to finish it with just a little melted butter. You don't have to do this. Just add some flavor, moisture on top. I'm gonna get one more in. There's that sizzle, there's that fry. Sometimes it may take one or two to get the hang of it, get the consistency, the heat you want. So I always test the first one, maybe the second one, third one, they'll get better. Just like pancakes. Now, if you wanna do garlic naan, you can chop up some fresh garlic, press that into your naan, maybe with some cilantro leaves or any kind of spices you want, and you can go ahead and cook it up with the garlic right inside. That's what we're looking for. When you put the naan in there, you want a good, generous coating of oil. You want that kind of crisp and fry on the first side. That'll give you a crispy bottom and a nice, soft, fluffy top. That's the ticket! See, that's perfect. We got crispy edges, nice even color on the bottom. Nice. Our second one. You can even do some melted ghee instead of avocado oil. That works just as well. Spray me. Got my sous chef working today. Thank you, Strons. You can get specific and weigh out the dough so each of them the right size, but we're not running a restaurant here. We're not publishing recipes. Well, I guess I am, you're not. So whenever you're trying out a new recipe, don't be worried about how it looks. It's all an experiment and it'll still taste delicious. This one looks like the state of Michigan. I always love a recipe like this to make with my nieces and nephews, maybe younger chefs that are learning and starting out. They can easily roll these out, flatten them out, and then you can do the hard part, the cooking. I'm gonna finish the rest of these up and then we're gonna dig in. Let's give these a taste. They look so perfectly fluffy. Light and airy in the center. That little bit of butter on the top gives it some really great flavor. They're just a delightful chew, a great canvas for just about any recipe, or scooping up sauce, a little tang too. That yeast, that yogurt, these are very good. Especially when you get a little bit of crisp on the bottom, a little bit of that crunch and texture. Look at that fluffy interior. This naan is super easy to make. Anybody can do it. Give it a try.